Now we would like to look also more specific at global workforce or global leadership, expatriate issues, and so forth. Here I have some two guiding questions. How to develop global leaders? Because large multinational corporations, they need to have managers, top managers. And the thing is, it needs to be planned. If not, suddenly a top leader gets burned out or sick or doesn't want to do or whatever or retires, then you have a gap, you have a hole, and then you need to fill it. So that's why it needs to be planned. And typically not just one replacement, you have multiple options. Or some people say it's a tournament. People compete, and some companies are very famous for it. I think Boeing or also GE in particular. GE, before the CEO retires, a couple years before the CEO retires, they have 3, 4, a couple of top managers who will be all assigned into very important positions, division heads, head of a major country, and then they compete. And the best manager will become the next CEO. And it's really like typical American competition approach. And even before, they have long-term planning, how to develop these people into higher positions. And then specifically also let us talk about expatriates and how to train them, prepare them for their overseas assignments. First, let's talk about global leaders. So if you would like to become a senior manager, very often it means global leader, because otherwise, unless you would like to work in more like government-related organizations, which is more domestic, but even there you have also more foreign outward-oriented ministries and so forth. There's a huge line of literature looking into what kind of characteristics, what kind of traits a global leader need to possess. And it's also not consistent. But here are some of the ideas, the skills or the traits or competencies a leader should possess. And according to some definitions, they focus more on these types of emotional or personal aspects, and then some would be more cross-cultural related. Here just some idea, and many of these traits that have been mentioned. So what have been mentioned a lot would be adaptability to new situations or managing paradox, because we're living in a highly volatile and uncertain environment. Just think back the last 2 years. We had suddenly COVID-19 crisis, pandemic, then we have a Ukraine war, a Russian war in the Ukraine. Lots of things happened, which had very pervasive effects on business, on multinational corporations, particularly also for Germany. Some companies did very well, others went bankrupt or near bankrupt. Also the background, of course, is very different. But the point is here, as a top manager of a major company, you need to manage in such an environment. In order to be able to do so, you need to be able to adapt to completely different situations and also manage these paradoxes, because you do this, you do that, crisis. A crisis has major negative consequences, but also at the same time, they're huge opportunities. Sometimes you're lucky. You can greatly benefit. Sartorius was also greatly benefited from Corona crisis. And so did Amazon and some other companies. But some of them also, they really took the opportunities that were being presented to them. Other aspect would be here managing cross-cultural conflict. Cultural differences can be sometimes troublesome and also can be result in conflict. And then also how to deal with conflict. There are different conflict strategies. The idea would be not to avoid the conflict or simply to compromise, but find good outcomes for both parties involved in such a conflict. Again, managing uncertainty. Again, related to adapting to new situations, very much related. In this cross-cultural context, working in multinational teams. And very often that means virtual teams. We will talk more about that also next week. Global virtual teams and so forth. That has become the common standard nowadays. As soon also as you join a company, let it be Sartorius, Volkswagen, you name it, very likely sooner or later you will be working internationally, maybe at home, but maybe frequently communicating with your colleagues and overseas, coordinating different projects. Yeah, and because it's the environment changing, so maybe also your job itself, and you need to be able to react to it. Cross-cultural adjustment would be another typical trait expected from global leader in the future. It is very likely you will be living or at least traveling abroad for work, assuming you aspire higher levels. That is a common part of a business career. And all what that helps, I think that's also what you can hear in many of these graduation speeches. In the US, they invite famous business people back to campus, and then famous people, they give a talk and address the graduates. And I think one really famous speech was also by Steve Jobs, former Apple CEO. And almost all of these CEOs, top managers, entrepreneurs and so forth, they always emphasize curiosity. Be curious, go out, learn new things and discover. That is important more than ever before. And then there's a host of other aspects. Here, I think here dotted in red. In general, global business savviness, so meaning you also need to know business. So when I asked you about news, what's going on with Volkswagen, what's going on here, what about exchange rate risk, blah, 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 and so forth, that's important. Your business, not all, most of your business students, to know what's going on in the business world, and then also, of course, specifically in your industry, in your job, and so forth. Important would be also some kind of self-maintenance, openness related to curiosity, flexibility. These are all very typical personality traits that are important. Related is self-reliance. And again, also here, we mentioned tensions of duality and paradox. You have crisis, opportunity, threats, how you deal with this. And changing environment, personal skills are important, international negotiation skills. Negotiation all the time on the job. Who will do the job? Who will get a pay raise? Who will get promoted? Who will get this and that? It's all important. Being able also to do that internationally and dealing with people. So that's a long list of traits that are all considered important. And then the idea, of course, is from a HRD perspective, how to select, and then particularly here, how to develop these traits among global talent or people that are destined to form top leaders in the future. And it could be that some of these traits, or maybe also you're very high on some of them, others maybe not so high. And then there's some way through experience, formal learning, and so forth, how it can be improved. And there's another more simplified version, many of these one put into 4 categories, such as self-management, culture acumen, business acumen, and paradox management. Again, you see this paradox, uncertainties, differences, business knowledge, but also about being able to manage yourself, and also here this cross-cultural acumen, so that you possess cultural intelligence or cross-cultural competence. And that you can find in almost all different definitions of what makes a global leader. We talked a lot about global leadership characteristics. And there are some ways how companies can try to promote that among their global talent. Here, a very simplified summary of what companies can do. The 4 T's. It's from America, so for something, 4 T's. My colleagues, and they very much like this, the 4 T's. Here we have the 4 P's in marketing. We have the 4 T's here in global HRD. The first one would be transfer. And by transfer, we mean international transfer, relocation. Because we want to instill these kind of global skills, cultural adjustment, cultural conflict management, and so forth. And we talked about before, 70, 20, 10. So one of the main ways how to instill that is by experience, international experience, international work experience. So meaning many large multinational corporations, they intentionally send out expats at different stages. It could be already at entry level. You join a company in this global talent program or European top talent program or whatever it's being called. You would join here the German branch office or German headquarters. Then you would spend 3 months in Mexico, 4 months in America, and then you come back and then you start your job, so to speak. And later on also at mid-level, upper management level, you will be transferred to another country, maybe to assume a leadership role in the foreign subsidiary. And the other T would be training. That's also what most people think of, HLD, training development, training, of course. Yeah, training is also important. Also can be formal training. Yeah, and that can also mean very often for global talent pools. We have special global top talent, high potential training pools. Very often then people can be nominated from supervisors and they enter a talent pool and they receive special training, special treatment. Maybe they have a coach, a personal coach, they have personal development programs, they meet other high potentials, they can network, they have mentors, yeah, specific training. And then another T, international business, you can imagine travel. Travel, in contrast to transfer, would be short term. So meaning you would travel overseas to business partners. Could be also short-term assignment. Maybe you travel for 2 months to a different country. Or you, in some jobs, if you're as a CF, or not a CFO, but you're in the finance department, you're this international finance department, you would travel to many different subsidiaries and you would check the books and then also check what is behind and travel to the different subsidiaries, talk to the local CFOs. And so you also gain a lot of international experience, exposure, create networks, you learn. Again, it's more this on-the-job training from experience. And then the next one would be teams. That was already on the slide before. Working in international teams. That's extremely important because very often if you're a manager, it's not only to be this authoritarian leader, but also to be able to cooperate with many people and work on teams. And again, this is some kind of experience, learning from experience. So 4 T's that all can help develop global leaders. And again, development means it can also be really a long-term plan, a strategic planning and combining of these different T's. Here's just one example. Take the example of PwC. They have a leadership development program, and so do also many other large companies have. So PwC is a very large company, also in Germany. I think every year they recruit between 500 and more than 1,000, 2,000 people every year. And they're well represented in many, many countries. They do business in 144 countries even. And you can imagine it's highly complex. And they also serve global companies who do business in many countries, and they need to offer full service then also for these multinational companies. The challenge they have, that's not unique to PwC, is they've a lack of leaders or shortage, let's say shortage of leaders with global business perspective. And if that is the case, you and they want to develop them. Because very often PwC is country-based. You have Germany, you have Japan, you have America, and they're not so well connected. Sometimes they're also legally independent, but they try to improve these global connections, and hence they develop a global leadership program. So it lasts 5 months. Again, different countries and managers can nominate high performers. So they're mid-range, 5 to 10 years work experience. And the idea is then to build a high-performance global leadership skills, establish a global network of future leaders. And what then they do is they do different action projects. Maybe also they learn together, work together. Then they have coaches, dedicated coaches who give individual advice. Then they have all kinds of networking events. So they may meet at some venue, maybe in Paris, maybe in New York. They meet in person. They may invite a senior manager from inside, outside the company, and they have opportunity to network with others, get to know peers and also senior managers, all in preparation for senior management positions. That's fairly common in major companies. It can be limited, 5 months, but very often it can be also longer, 2 years. Yeah, there's often like some kind of time frame. It will be then also re-evaluated, or it's also for certain levels, mid-level, senior mid-level, or in the case maybe also, as I mentioned before, General Electric, maybe for selecting top managers, yeah, where they have a certain development program. What is also important for global companies would be to try to achieve some internal control or global alignment. Ideally, you try to achieve that via a shared or joint corporate culture. In a multinational company, however, we have many different units. We have the headquarters, we have subsidiary A, B, C, and so forth. And sometimes, also in the case of Sartorius or many other companies, Unit B was a different unit. Right? It's completely independent. And they acquired it 2 years ago. And they have their own distinct culture. And even also organically can grow because you have a multi-domestic strategy. So they all have their own ways of how to do business. And there's very little coordination. So ideally, there should be some kind of alignment. Right? It can be here, you have one organization culture, and then you still have some overlaps, some differences, but you have certain principles, guiding principles that are shared across. And that can also be then trained by offering, particularly at the initial stage when people join, you have onboarding, you try to explain and the corporate culture, and then also through lived experiences. And here, of course, the focus on training. There are also other mechanisms, by laying off, relocating people and so forth, also trying to achieve that. Okay, now we come to our last topic for today, expatriate training. So in terms of content, what is very often being offered, language, if it's a foreign country with a different foreign language. In most contexts, they use English as the business language, but not in all countries. So take the example here, Argentina. Many companies do business in Spanish there. And English, okay, it may help, but it may not be sufficient. So there would be, of course, expatriate selection, but also training to some extent. I talked about language before. That's something you can improve, but it's really hard to raise it to a level so to become business fluent. So that is also typically not desired by companies because companies don't have the time to send someone, maybe you, for 1 year or for 4 years to a different country, and 2 years you get exempted only to study the language. Maybe it would be fun, but money, the company doesn't make money and she has to be paid by the company, or that would be her expectation. That is not doable. It's simply not doable. But companies still, what they typically do is they offer some basic language training. And that makes very often a major difference. And I notice all too often when I worked extensively in different countries in Asia, and you have a German manager, blonde hair or no hair, maybe a big belly, and then he says hello in the local language, and all the locals love him. Whoa, you speak our language, you know us, oh wow, you speak language so good, and that breaks the ice, it creates a good atmosphere. So speaking some basic language, whatever that is, would create a good atmosphere, and also it will maybe facilitate living in the foreign country. At least you can order food in the foreign country and order a taxi and give taxi directions. That would be very helpful. Cross-cultural awareness training, there could be specific business etiquette. You go to Argentina, so you learn about Argentinian business etiquette. So that could be offered, or general cross-cultural training. And then it could also be some more strategic. What is the role of the company, or the subsidiary in itself, or very job specific. If you're an accountant, and there's some accountant-specific training. Very often, this does not apply to expatriates from the headquarters to subsidiaries, because their role is to transfer that knowledge. but maybe also for them. It's more often if expats from subsidiaries to another subsidiary or from subsidiary headquarter, then this type of training is also important. It would be ideal to offer substantial training to the expat and the family. So everyone who's accompanying the person, that would be ideal. Reality, sadly, is very often no one receives training because there's no time. And the expat is badly needed still in the headquarters because they need to finish the project before they can go, and that's important. But ideally, some training should be offered, and not only to the expat but also to the family, if the family is joining. Here, also some specific considerations when sending maybe female expats to some locations. In many countries in Europe, we have gender equality legally and also practice mostly, but it may not always be in some other target markets. We now have Football World Cup in the Middle East. There are certain restrictions to women and other people of different orientations, and then it's important for the company to decide how to deal with this, whether to select, and if they select, also how to prepare people for such assignments. To understand what is expected behavior, and then it's also then important to think, also discuss within experts how to deal with that. It doesn't mean you have to apply, localize. And that's also not what most foreign companies do in the Gulf, in the Middle East region and so forth, but they strike some kind of compromise that is acceptable, both for the expat, but also maybe for the receiving nation. So that means probably no public drinking and nudity and so forth, but you don't need to wear, like, fully cover everything and this and that. There's some specific experts who can tell you what would be acceptable and what would be a good way to do. Okay, then I think one aspect also which is very important, because we talk a lot about expats. The expats are so important. They have important missions to fulfill. The thing is, they are not alone. When they go to a foreign country, they will be working with people, but mostly host country nationals, locals. If the expert is supposed to transfer knowledge, someone needs to receive that knowledge. On the recipient side, then very often would be host country nationals, so the locals. And then it's important not only to think of the expat and his or her family, that is important, of course, but also of the people in those foreign subsidiaries. Because it can sometimes be, just imagine this expat from America with cowboy boots and cowboy hat comes, is super smart and or beliefs and so, but not well received by locals. And that would be the worst case. The company has great ideas, great products, great everything, management practice and so forth, but the locals are very resistant, reluctant to cooperate and so forth, and then no one benefits. The company not, the expat not, the locals not. And then it's from the HR perspective to prepare and train all involved parties. And that also includes host country nationals. And we can also think of different levels: upper management, supervisor, middle level, or more at the operational level. Because they're all important for the expat to achieve his or her objectives and for the company to achieve the objectives. And so it's critical really to involve and prepare then these host country nationals. And we are also living nowadays in times of localization. Even some companies who pursue global strategies, very often they try to localize. And localization means in that regard often sending middle managers or even upper managers from the foreign subsidiary to the headquarters. And then teach them the corporate way, the American way, the German way, and so forth. And so they internalize the values of the company, and then they can return and represent the company in the foreign subsidiary. So they're representatives of the headquarters, even though they're host country nationals, they're locals in that country, but they're aware of both sides, and they can really understand and represent the objectives of the multinational corporation.